find some new people that might share some similar experiences or expertise that you might have. Just get some ideas and share thoughts between each other. So again, I welcome you all here. I will kind of go ahead and get started. Hopefully people will be coming in. I've got 3 more people coming in here. And apologize when I look up here. I've got 3 monitors. So I've got my PowerPoint, which you're seeing over here. And then I've got my presenter notes over here, and then my Zoom meeting up here. So I've got kind of 3 places to look here. So if I'm looking up, that's why. It's not, I'm not asking for help, but you know, maybe there's some of that too. So anyways, my name is Ryan Corcoran, as you can see up right there. And I am the manager of campus media services within the Media Resources Center. And I also have the dubious honor of being the university's Zoom administrator for the past 7 years, not just in the past 7 weeks, as you might think, but past 7 years. And so I've been using and teaching Zoom for quite a while. And I feel like I know a lot about Zoom, but even so, I'm constantly learning new stuff every day. And I hope you'll learn some new stuff today as well, especially when I see some of the cool and creative things that faculty are doing in their classes. It really kind of reinforces how powerful and flexible this tool can really be. So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and some of the things we're going to talk about today, basically I'm going to structure it as though it were a, you know, we're going to talk about stuff to do ahead of time, stuff to do during class, and even stuff to do after your class is over. A lot of the stuff I'm going to focus on today is really focused more on classes, but a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about is transferable also to just professional business meetings as well. A lot of the things that are best practices for classes are also best practices all of the time. And I'm not really going to talk about Zoom bombing in the way you might have heard about it in social media. Just know that if you do the things that I recommend in these slides and this lesson, that you're going to avoid the majority of the Zoom bombing problems. So I'm not trying to avoid the topic, I'm trying to prevent the topic. So we'll just kind of go at it from that directions. So first thing we're going to look at is the different types of licenses that are available to you as a WSU member. Everybody from Wichita State has a Zoom account. All they have to do is sign in with their MyWSU ID, like we're going to show you here in just a second. And when you first log in, you'll log in under a basic account. Basic account is what's freely available to anybody on the internet, including right here at Wichita State. The main difference that you need to understand about what a basic account does is if you're meeting with more than 2 participants, you and somebody else, then there's a 40-minute time limit to that. And that 40-minute time limit goes away if you get the licensed account. You can see kind of the chart here of all the different features and who has what and who doesn't. But for the most part, the thing that most people care about is just that, that 40-minute cap, okay? So if you don't already have a licensed account, then you're going to want to go online and request that. And the link that you get that at, I'll share several times throughout this this presentation, but it's basically just wichita.edu/AV as an audiovisual. And you can go there and see lots of different request types there. So again, if you're doing anything other than just meeting one-on-one with students through Zoom, you're going to want that licensed account. And it is free, by the way. Academic Affairs has paid for enough licenses that most people can have them. Again, faculty and staff can get them for free. If you have TAs or student employees who need them, they're fine too. But we do ask that you ask for them, because any student can go online and say, I need a licensed account. And we don't know that they're a real legit request unless it comes from you. We have also made exceptions for leaders of student organizations. And again, we prefer that those requests come in from either student involvement or the sponsor of that organization. So how do you request it? There it is, the wichita.edu/AV, audiovisual. Just click on Zoom licensed account upgrade request. I do make a big note here that anybody that has a Shockers email address, and that's going to be students, TAs, that kind of person, their accounts are going to be reverted back to basic at the start of each term. And we didn't do it for summer term, so basically before fall and before spring. We're going to revert those back, mainly because the turnover in students is so rapid that we want to make sure that we have a finite number of those licensed accounts, and I want to make sure that we are reserving them for the people who are A, still here, and B, who still really need them. So we want to make sure that we are taking care of that. All right, so first, we're going to talk about what kind of settings you should set before your meetings. There are two main places you're going to look at where you can change your settings. First is in your account settings, which is basically your global settings, stuff that is true all of the time. And then there's individual meeting settings. And those individual meeting settings are specific to each individual meeting that you set. And they can be the same, they can be different. You can override your global settings with your meeting settings if you want to, in most cases. So we're going to first start with your account settings. And some of you may have never even seen this before, and that's okay. We're going to start by going to the Zoom portal. And the Zoom portal is found at wichitastate.zoom.us.
Ryan, are you sharing slides?
I am.
I'm not able to see slides. Is everyone else able to see them and I'm doing something wrong? You are?
I can see them. I'm fine.
So I'm on speaker view. If I go to the gallery view.
If you have multiple monitors, it might be on a second monitor. You should be seeing the Zoom webpage right now.
It's okay. It's saying launching, so I don't. Maybe it's just on my end. Then never mind.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, me too.
That is a good reminder that I will let you know that I am recording this. Probably should have told you that, 5 minutes ago. I am recording this, and it will be available through IDA's ARC conference playlist a little bit later.
Ryan, will this slide deck also be available?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think mainly as a part of this presentation, but also I think they may even do it separately. I think they're gonna repackage some of this stuff too, and that's okay. So anyways, so we're gonna start at, through your web browser, going to wichitastate.zoom.us, and you should see a page that looks similar to this with the Wichita State logo, and you're gonna click, this also will be the place where you can download the client as well, right down here at the bottom. But we're gonna click sign in, right there. And that should bring you to a page that looks kind of like this. And you're going to enter your MyWCU ID at wichita.edu. And it's a little bit different. It's not your email address. It's your MyWCU ID at wichita.edu. We'll put that in there. And then we're also going to put in your password. Oops. And when you click continue, go back, and click login, then you get taken to the regular Duo authentication page like you probably, hopefully have seen already. If you're new to the university, you may not have, but basically do what you normally do. I'm going to hit send me a push. And then you're brought to a page which sometimes you see, sometimes you don't. And this is like a information sharing confirmation. Just, is it okay that we share your information with this login connection? I always hit the ask me again the second time if it changes, and then click accept. Okay. On your account settings, we're going to start with the profile page. I'm not going to go into any detail on that profile page, but that's where you find information about changing your profile picture if you haven't done that yet. If you don't have a profile picture, Zoom just shows your initials in your little box there. And basically what you see, here, I'll turn off my video. And you can see I have a profile picture there. I may have to respotlight my video here. Nope, good. And you can also personalize your meeting ID if you have a licensed account. I'm not really going to talk about personal meeting IDs today, but if you have any questions, you can ask me about that. Also, it's a good place right there in your profile page to verify what type of license you have, whether it's basic or licensed. So if you don't know, that's a good place to check. And next, the settings page, which is this bottom button here, is where you go to set all of your kind of global preferences. We have already set most of the recommended settings that we suggest for most people. There are a ton of options. So I just recommend that you kind of go through every single one of them and read through them and find out what you think is appropriate for you. I do recommend enabling the only authenticated users can join this meeting. That's a really good way to help cut down on that Zoom bombing a little bit. Also make sure that people are logged in when they join the Zoom meeting. You probably had to do that to join this meeting. So next, we are also looking at things that you can choose for yourself, your personal preferences, and things like auto-saving chats. Do you want to auto-save those chats to a file when you're done without you having to remember to do it? Do you want to set up polling for your classes? And I highly recommend that. Waiting rooms, that's almost a must. You're in a waiting room and you join this meeting. You know, for your every Tuesday, Thursday class, I don't know, that's kind of up to you. But most of the time, I highly recommend waiting rooms. And the other settings that you see there are just kind of your time savers. Do you want your host and participants video turned on? Right now they're defaulted to off. Do you want to join before host? I usually don't recommend that. So if you have waiting room turned on, that one almost doesn't even matter. If you are not using a waiting room, I highly recommend not doing join before host. And then mute participants on entry. Again, that's kind of your personal preference. Most of the time, I do mute participants on entry. It just makes my life that much easier. All right, next, we're looking at your meeting settings. And it'll look a little bit different whether you're setting your meetings up on the web or through the app. Right now, we're going to look at it through the app. And what you're seeing here is the schedule meeting window when you click schedule. And you're going to start by entering in your topic type, name, and the date and time, all that kind of good stuff. There's a button here about recurring meetings. We're going to talk about that just a little bit later. But if you need to set up a recurring meeting, make sure and check that box. And just know that what that really does is all that does is it makes it so that meeting ID never goes away, or at least not for a year. Your meeting ID, I almost always recommend generate automatically. Same with your password. Just let the system do it for you. The video and host, the host and participants video, host on, participants off. Again, my personal preference. You might want to have both off, both on. It's up to you. Audio, I almost always suggest doing the telephone and computer audio. That gives students a choice, whether they want to use one or the other. We'll come back to the calendar part in a second. We're going to look at the advanced options. And under advanced options, you can see here, again, my personal recommendations. Waiting room, enable join before host is off. Mute participants is on. Only authenticated users can join is on. And then again, recording, automatically record, that's up to you. I don't automatically record every single meeting because again, I have a lot of meetings. So that's kind of up to you whether or not you are forgetful and want to make sure that you do record them. And we'll get to what recording looks like a little bit later as well. So next we're going to look at, before we click schedule, there's this calendar area. And what I want to let you know, and this comes from the past several months of getting lots of tickets and people needing help. What I want you to know, sorry, I've got somebody in the waiting room here, is that little calendar is just a time saver convenience for you. Okay, what that's going to do is when you hit the schedule button, it's going to pop up a calendar invite for this meeting. And again, that's just a convenience thing. What it's doing is it's creating a calendar meeting in your Outlook for you and pasting all the meeting links and all that stuff. And it's just doing it for you instead of you having to go into Outlook, create a new meeting, and then paste all the stuff. It's just a time saver. There's no magic thing that's happening between Zoom and Outlook right there. So we're going to click schedule. And now we need to make sure that people can get to our meeting. So the way most people do this is just through Outlook. Now, classes, probably not. We'll talk about that in just a second. But in Outlook is where you're going to set your recurring pattern if you're going to do that. And you'll just send that out either as a regular calendar invite or we'll post it in Blackboard. So this is the calendar invite, the top ribbon there. And here's where you can set all the settings you want for your Outlook calendar. Again, this is just for your calendar. And you can see here's that recurrence button. And here's where we set up that pattern of recurrence. And we set obviously our time and how often it recurs. Is it daily, weekly, monthly, etc.? And then is it Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday? You can set it for every third Monday if you want to. It's kind of whatever your pattern is. And then set an end date. I highly recommend that. Otherwise, it'll be on your calendar for the rest of time. So set an end date to that as well. And then when you hit OK, just make sure that you have your attendees listed there. Again, if you're doing this for a class, you're probably not going to want to type in 30 email addresses. So that's probably not how you're going to do this for a class, but this kind of, again, just general use here. Make sure that the link is there before you hit go. When you're ready, you either hit send update or just save if you're going to just save it to your calendar. Okay, what about Blackboard? There's obviously lots of different ways you can do it in Blackboard. Probably the most common is just creating an announcement. My announcements in my class are at the very top, very first thing you see when you log into class. There's your announcements, and I always have the most recent thing on the top. So posting it there is really convenient. Also, if you are the type that structures your class in modules, class modules, whether it's a topic module or a week module or however you organize your class, you can also put it in those sections as well. You can also put it in the calendar for your course. I don't recommend only putting it in the calendar because most students are not really trained to look in the calendar. And so you can put it there if you want to, but don't only put it there. Not a lot of people, not everybody uses that calendar feature. Okay. Also, we're going to talk about co-host. Do you need or want a co-host? A co-host is basically somebody who's there to manage your participants, the chat, muting people, unmuting people. You can see that my attention has been divided several times by looking up for people in the waiting room or muting people, things like that. Those are things that a co-host can do for you. We do kind of recommend them if you have very large classes. Zoom can only hold up to 49 pictures at a time. So if you have more than 49 people and they're going to have their cameras on, then you're probably going to want a co-host because it's hard for you to zip back and forth between pages of camera views. And so we just, that'd be a good time. Also, if you are having a really interactive class, and I apologize that this class is more of a lecture than I like classes to be generally, but if there's a lot of muting and unmuting going on, having a co-host there can help there. Also, if you're just really not comfortable with Zoom and you just want to try to just relax a little bit and let somebody else worry about the logistics, co-hosts can really, really help. And again, the way you can do that, if you have a TA, that's really one of the best ways, is just have your TA act as your co-host for you. If you do not have a TA, which is probably most people, then you can also request a co-host from Campus Media Services. It's currently a free service that we offer. And you just go to wichita.edu/AV again, and click on the link for a Zoom co-host request. Again, it's free. They're not there to help you with your content at all. They are not experts in any kind of content other than running your Zoom meeting. So they're just there to help you. Polling questions. This is something you'll probably want to do in advance. You can do them on the fly if you want to. You'll look a lot more organized if you do. I have a poll at the end if I remember to launch it. You're going to go to that web portal, wichita.state.zoom.us, go to meetings, and then you're going to click on the title of the meeting that you want to change, and then scroll down to poll and click add. And I won't bore you with all the details there. It's a pretty intuitive interface from that point on. Just remember to hit save. There's only one question type. Basically, there's a multiple choice. The only option you get is can they select one or can they select many? But there's only one question type for a poll. So it's not really a good testing assessment type tool. It's just literally getting feedback from people. Also, breakout rooms. If you're going to do breakout rooms, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on breakout rooms today, but you can set those up in advance. Again, you'll do that through the web portal, wichita.state.zoom.us. Same kind of process as you do for polls. You click on meetings, find the meeting you want, and then instead of you click edit this meeting, and so there's no breakout rooms button right there. So click edit this meeting, and then you'll find breakout rooms. You'll check the breakout rooms box, and then that will open up a little area where you can then you can create your rooms ahead of time. Now, if you're going to have small classes, again, you can just kind of manually enter people's email addresses to pre-assign them to breakout rooms. Most of the time what I do is I just create rooms ahead of time so that when I open up breakout rooms in my meeting, I can just throw people in there randomly. I don't usually do pre-assigned groups. You can import them by a CSV file, but your mileage may vary. I've heard kind of frustrations on that end from a lot of faculty. So just be aware that that you might have some issues there. So use that feature with caution. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at a couple chat questions here. Will I be talking about the Outlook add-on? Not exactly, because that's kind of it's not necessary. It's really more for your convenience. It's a way you can create meetings from within Outlook instead of going to the Zoom app first. Again, the way I'm teaching you here is the way I recommend it. The Zoom Outlook connector is just there for your convenience. Also, there's a lot of people on Macs that have had some issues getting it installed. So I just kind of generally don't, it's not that I discourage people from using it, but I don't really encourage it either. I don't use it myself. I have it installed, but I pretty much never use it. So it's just kind of something it's something you can use, but not recommend it. Another question says, can you create polls ahead of time if you plan to conduct a few to touch base? Yes, I just addressed that. So you beat me to it. Yes, you can create them ahead of time. And I almost always recommend that you do it ahead of time because it takes a little bit of time to set them in. So you don't want to do it on the fly. Okay, now we're going to get to the actual meeting. All the stuff we talked about so far has just been stuff you do ahead of time. Again, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So now that we've gone through all that, here's what we actually need to do to get your meeting to run smoothly. So like I just said about the Outlook connector, I highly recommend that you start your meetings through the app. Okay, don't just go to your calendar and click the link. One of the main reasons I suggest you do that is because depending on your settings, again, if you don't have that require authentication option checked, you can click the link in your Outlook calendar and join the meeting as a participant, not the host. Because if you're not logged in, Zoom doesn't know that you are the host because you just clicked on the link like everybody else just clicked on the link. So I highly, highly recommend starting the meeting from Zoom, okay? Not from Outlook or Blackboard or however you communicated that. You just go to the meetings tab up there and then find the meeting you want on the left, click start, and that's it. Once you got the meeting going, you'll need to make sure that your audio and video are working correctly. I do this every single time I meet, every time. Even though I check my settings before meetings start, once I'm in the meeting, I always double check. So I'm gonna start with audio. Click the little caret next to the mute or unmute button. Just check and make sure that your microphone and speaker are what you want them to be. And then you can also just test your speaker. It'll pop up a little wizard, go through that. And if you're having problems, or if you know you're not going to, if testing the speaker doesn't work, then you click this audio settings button. And then that's going to bring up a dialog box that looks like this. And here you can check your speaker and microphone selection there. You can test both the speaker, test both the speaker and the mic options there as well. Down below here are my personal settings again. I have all 4 of these options checked to automatically join by computer audio, because I know I'm pretty much never going to join by phone. My internet's good enough, I don't have to worry about it. I always have my mic muted when I join a meeting. And then these last 2, I use them occasionally, but I leave those all checked. Okay, now we'll talk about video settings in the same way. You're going to click the caret button down to next to the video start or stop video. You can select which camera you want right there if you have more than one. Most of the time, most people just have one. You can choose a virtual background, which you can see I'm using here. I'm not really going to go through that. Just know that that kind of depends on your computer. So some people can use it, some people can't. So never make it a requirement for your students to use a virtual background, because some people can't do that. And your video settings, just like the audio settings, is right there. Brings up a dialog box where you can select your camera from the drop down. And the options here, again, these are my personal preferences, and they're also somewhat dependent on my computer, because some people's computer don't have the processing power to enable HD. Mine does, so I've got that enabled. I like to have my video mirrored, just so that I'm not having to do the weatherman thing. I know which way I'm pointing. And these are options that again, these are my personal options. You choose what you want. These aren't necessarily critical. These are just kind of up to you. All right. Next, we're gonna look at security settings. What time is it? We're doing good. Security settings. I click the security button. This is new. So if you've not been in Zoom for the past month, which I don't know how you could have managed that, but if you have not been in Zoom for the past month, there's a new security button. You bring that up, and it's basically just shortcuts to some of the more commonly used security settings. If you're not using a co-host and you're concerned about unauthorized people joining your meeting, you can lock the meeting by clicking the checkbox there. Just be aware that if somebody drops and tries to rejoin the meeting, they can't because it's locked. So use that very sparingly. Just real kind of special occasions. Right now, this meeting is not locked, but I do have the waiting room enabled. So that way I can kind of monitor who's coming into the meeting. Likewise, you can choose whether or not you want to let people unmute themselves. If it's a large lecture class, probably not. If it's a small discussion group, yes, for sure. So that, again, but it's your personal preferences. There are some more security settings that are under this share screen. So click that little caret as well. And I'm going to click this advanced sharing options link. Oops. And the box that pops up, these are my defaults, but one participant can share at a time and only the host. If you do ever want to have a student present and you want them to share their screen, then you have two options. One is you can change this setting to all participants, or you can just make them a co-host temporarily, which will give them the ability to share. And then when they're done, you can remove their co-host privileges. So it's kind of up to you. Okay, finally, before we get started, don't forget to hit record if you are wanting to do that. Most of the time, you're going to be recording locally to your computer. We'll talk about that in a second. If you're on a device like a Chromebook or an iOS device, something like that, and you're hosting a meeting, you can still record, but you're going to be recording to the cloud. And just be aware that all cloud recordings are deleted around 6 months after they're created. So you're going to want to do something with that. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, managing your participants. Again, if you have a co-host, you're not going to have to worry about this. I'm worrying about this on my third screen up here. And so that's just something that I do. We're going to click on the participants tab here. Participants come in listed alphabetically by their display name. And so if their display name is incorrect, they will show up incorrect in the list as well. People who raise their hand or are unmuted, they will float to the top for you. So you don't have to go searching for people who are unmuted. They should float to the top. Sometimes it takes a few seconds, but they will float to the top. The very, very important mute all button, very handy. I've already used it 4 times during this session. If people unmute themselves and forget to mute themselves again, that mute all button helps a lot. Be aware that that does mute everybody except you. I was in a very important meeting with the provost once, and I thought that button muted everybody except hosts. No, it mutes everybody but you. So just make sure that you are clicking it when you know that you want to use it. Next is this little more button. It's really hard to see. It's those 3 little dots. We're going to click that. It brings up some buttons or some links that you've already seen before under that security tab, like locked meeting, enable waiting room, and allowing people to unmute themselves. So you can do that here just like you could in the security tab as well. So also be aware that participants have these buttons here like yes, no, slower, faster, and I apologize, I've not been paying attention to that in this meeting. So if you've been using that, I apologize, I'm not paying attention. But also if they raise their hand, that shows up when they click here, it shows up next to their name just like that. So whether they click yes, no, that will all show up right there in that participants right next to their name. And you can use this button as the host to clear everybody. So if you've got 50 people with their hands raised, you can hit that button and just clear everything. So that really helps a lot too. Okay. Chat, we're going to talk about chat just a little bit. Again, you can open up the chat window by clicking the chat button on the bottom. And again, it kind of depends on your settings, what you had set globally or for this meeting. But again, the tiny little more button down here in the corner, the 3 little dots, always look for those 3 little dots. Brings up this little dialog box here of who people can chat with. Most of the time I have it set to host only. I still want people to be able to ask me questions, but I don't want them necessarily chatting with everybody. Again, in some classes, you may want people to be able to post publicly. I believe we have it set, we have it turned off that you can, I don't think people are allowed to chat privately. Or maybe that's just my settings. I might have turned that off from my account, but never, ever, ever, ever let people chat with each other privately. Never. Just don't do it. Bad idea. Sharing content. Again, we already talked about the security around that. Now we're going to kind of talk about how to do it, like I'm doing here. Before I go do that, we have a couple questions about security. Is the security settings only there if you're the host? Yes. I believe co-hosts might also see it, but for sure hosts. Participants cannot see that, so you should not be able to see that down here. Question about Outlook versus Google Calendar. So again, that Outlook or Google Calendar button when you schedule the meeting, that's just for your convenience. If you're a Google Calendar person, click Google Calendar, not Outlook. Most people use Outlook. That's why we tell people to do that. Also, I don't think Google Calendar is officially supported by the university. So if you're using Google Calendar, you're on your own. Good luck. I'm a Google user personally at home, but and I love it. But here at the university, we are an Outlook Microsoft people. Okay. Sharing content like I'm doing here. I'm sharing my screen. I'm not sharing PowerPoint. We'll talk about that in a second. So we're going to click Share Screen button. That brings up basically all of the things that are available for you to share. Now, again, what I've done is I've created a PowerPoint that has all these screenshots in them because I can't really share my screen and show you how I'm sharing my screen. It's kind of a behind the scenes kind of thing. So there's a difference between sharing your screen and sharing PowerPoint. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. If you share your screen and then you have some kind of pop-up, whether it's a Outlook notification or if you've got Teams open or Slack or some other little thing that has pop-ups all the time, just be aware that those pop-ups can show up on top of your PowerPoint or whatever it is you're sharing, and that'll show up in your Zoom call. So if you have a student email you something in the middle of class, some other student, and that pops up as a notification, that could be a FERPA violation. So just think about those kinds of things before you share. I personally have got everything else that I'm not using right now closed during this Zoom meeting, so nothing pops up. I even have my phone on Do Not Disturb. So if any of you have tried to call me or text me, I'm sorry, but everything's shut off. Likewise, there are disadvantages to only sharing the PowerPoint. If you only share the PowerPoint, and then you're like, oh, I want to share something in Chrome. If you open up Chrome and drag it in front of your PowerPoint, then your users are just going to see a big black or gray spot where your Chrome window is. So you have to remember to stop sharing the PowerPoint and to reshare Chrome. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Right now, like I said, I'm sharing my screen. So if I drag something in front of it, like my Zoom window, you can see that. You can see me drag this window in front of it and then move it away. If you're going to share video content, I forgot what I was doing there. Try not to have Outlook open. Like I said, I've closed mine. Don't have Outlook open during class. That's just a bad idea. If you're going to share video, make sure you check this box that says optimize screen sharing for video clap. That could be a YouTube video. It could be a video that you have embedded in a PowerPoint, whatever. When you check that, it also automatically checks the share computer sound button. And I know a couple of you have asked, oops, I messed up my Zoom window when I moved it. A couple of you asked about how I was sharing audio before the meeting. That's how, is I had that button checked right there. So everything that was coming through my computer sound was going through the Zoom call as well. And so you do that if you have a video to play. When you click the share button here, it's going to move the share controls up to the top of your screen. So, I mean, not just the share controls, everything from your Zoom meeting goes up to the top. So don't be thrown off by that. The first time it'll kind of freak you out. And there's a couple new buttons here. You'll see a lot of the same buttons. Your mute and video buttons are still there. Security button, participants window, all that stuff is still there. Now you see pause share and annotate. So if you do need to bring something up on front of your screen that you don't want the students to see, you can pause share, do the thing you need to do, and then unpause. And annotate, I'm not going to really demonstrate annotating right now, but it's a really cool feature that lets you draw, write, whatever, right on your screen. You can also let students do that as well. So if you have I'll pick on math. If you're a math instructor and you've got math problems you want them to solve for you, you can actually, have a partially completed formula on the screen, let a student annotate, and then they can finish the problem for you. It's really kind of cool. Most of the time, though, you're not going to be using that. So come up here to the More button and find this Disable Participants Annotation. It's really important. You can, if you want to, just use it for emphasis by underlining something on the screen. So there's lots of really cool uses for annotation, but you'll want to play around with that a little bit. Just get some practice. All right, what's next here? So we're pretty much done with going through the stuff. I'm not going to show you how to teach. I'm going to show you how to end the meeting. There's more than one way to do that. If you click the end button, you'll see there's two options. One is end meeting for all, one is leave meeting. So leave meeting is when you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to do something, I'll be right back. And that way you'll leave the meeting open, everybody will stay in it, nothing's wrong, you leave, you go do what you're gonna do, reboot your computer if you need to, whatever needs to happen, you go do that and then come back. If you click the end meeting for all button, you're saying, all right, class is over, go home. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, as the saying says. That will end that meeting. People can't come back. However, if you did check that recurring meeting button, you can always, you as the host, can always reopen that meeting anytime, up to a year later. So that recurring meeting ID will last forever. So even if you did hit end meeting for all, if it's a recurring meeting, you can open it right back up again. That's okay. Okay, we're done with the meeting. Yay, now what? If you hit record, where did it go? That's a very common question. Most of the time it will pop up when you finish the meeting and it'll have to go through some processing kind of stuff. And it'll tell you, show you where it saved it most of the time. But if it didn't do that, or if you got interrupted, distracted, whatever, just know that it's in your documents folder under Zoom. And then in that Zoom folder, there's a meeting, there's a folder with your meeting name. That's now, thanks to Microsoft and Apple, have kind of worked things out. It's actually the exact same path in both places, if you can believe it. It's called Documents, Zoom, and then whatever the meeting name is. It's very convenient. They're both the same. Cloud recordings are in your web portal. So go back to that wichitastate.zoom.us, go to the recordings tab instead of the meetings tab, and it will show you. If for whatever reason your processing was interrupted, whether you closed the lid of your laptop, you lost power, whatever, it's okay. You just go back to your meetings tab in the Zoom app, and then you go to the recorded tab instead of the meetings tab, and then you find the meeting you need and hit convert. It's not a big deal. We've had one instance. You think about how many people we have at Wichita State. So far, we've had one instance that a video did not work correctly. And so for those, we do have to send them to Zoom to get fixed. But like I said, of all the recordings we've done so far, we've had one go bad. So that's a pretty good record. We had a question that says, if you were showing a video, like during class, I'm sharing a video, is there a way to pause or temporarily stop recording? Yes. I recommend pause, not stop. But when you hit record, here, I'll bring my Zoom window down again, you can see it. So when you hit record, the button changes to pause and stop. Okay, you can choose which one you want to do. Just hit pause, and when you're done, just hit the record again. So another question was, what video formats do you recommend? I'll talk about that right now. So where should your recording go? When Zoom processes it, it's going to turn it into an MP4 file. what I recommend you do is you put that in your Panopto folder for your class. If it's not for a specific class, you can request a personal folder in Panopto where you can put things that you're going to share between lots of classes. Again, be aware that if you have students that are visible or audible in your video, that would probably be a FERPA violation if you put that anywhere other than in that class. So don't put it in YouTube, don't put it in Vimeo, whatever. So I recommend Panopto 99.9% of the time, especially for classes. Then all you have to do is share that Panopto video in your Blackboard course. I don't know if the ARC conference has a Panopto session, but the IDA team can help you with Panopto if you're new to that. So definitely explore that. Just a couple more slides here. This is a question I get all the time. How do I take attendance?
Hey Ryan, can I ask you a question now or should I wait?
I'm almost done. Is
Okay, sure.
is it relevant to the video?
Go ahead. Yeah, it's like, so say I record in Zoom, then I want to share through Panopto. How do I move it to Panopto?
Basically, you just go to panopto.wichita.edu. I think that's the link. And there's a button there to upload it.
Okay.
Again, today's not a lesson on Panopto, but that is completely doable and it's very easy. You just go to that.
MP4 is, it will take MP4?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And whoops, here we go. Anyway, so you just go to that class, hit upload. It's really easy. Okay, what about attendance? If you want to take attendance, easiest way to do it is go back to that web portal, wichitastate.zoom.us. Hopefully it's burned into your brain now. Click on the reports tab and then usage reports. From there, you're going to find the meeting that you want to get the attendance for, and then click. It's really hard to, it's not very intuitive. The participants number is a link. So click that. It will bring up a list of who is in that meeting. Okay, so now what you need to do is think about what went well and what didn't, what you want to change for next time. You can change settings of a recurring meeting and it won't change that meeting ID or password. So if you've got a class set up for every Tuesday, Thursday, and you're like, I really want to set it so that the participants are muted upon entry, you can change that and it will come back. Write down anything you want to change for next time that you haven't scheduled so that you'll remember to change it next time. Lastly, if you have any questions, again, wichita.edu/AV as in audiovisual, submit a ticket for support. And you can also find the Media Resources Center on Facebook. Also, Instructional Design has a Facebook page as well. You feel free to submit questions there. Okay, if it's a true support question, like you're having a problem, put in a ticket. But if it's just a usage question, like what should I do in class, Facebook's a good way because it fosters discussion. So if you need to leave, go to another session, go to lunch like I'm going to do soon, feel free to leave. I'm going to stay here for the next 10 minutes and answer questions. So feel free to unmute yourself, turn your camera on. I can talk about more things, whatever you'd like to do. I really thank you for all coming. And again, watch for the recording. And again, thanks for coming. Hope you learned something. Oh, I was going to do a poll, wasn't I? I'm going to launch my poll. Here we go. A lot of you are still here. There's a poll. Did you learn even one new thing today? Just one. That's all I care about. Did you learn one thing? So here, I'll bring this down here so you can see it. As you as the instructor, when you launch a poll, you get to see in real time as the people respond. You can see how many people have responded as well. And you as the host, you cannot respond. When you're done, you can hit end polling and then share the results. And then that should pop up on your screen and you can look at that as long as you want to until I hit stop share. So again, thank you all for coming. If you have any more questions, can you reuse the same poll multiple times in a session? Yes, you can relaunch polling. Yep, you can open it back up again. I've had to do that before because I messed up. Any other questions in the chat? What do I mean by one-on-one interviews with guest speakers? Oh, so if you are going to have a guest speaker that you think you might want to use that guest speaker visit for either multiple classes or multiple semesters or whatever, then have a one-on-one interview with that guest speaker and record it. And then put that in Panopto in a shared place so that you can put it in lots of different classes. That's a really great way to do guest speakers. My wife does that for her classes all the time. She uses those video interviews for guest speakers multiple times. So it's just a one-on-one interview with her and a guest speaker. How do you proctor a test within Zoom? Oh, the question. First of all, I'll say that's not the best way to do it. And I know that's not the answer you want to hear. But proctoring a test within Zoom, basically, if you're doing it with a one-on-one person, it's pretty easy. You have them share their screen, you watch them. That's pretty much it. Their camera has to be on, screen sharing has to be on, and then you just watch them. If you're trying to do multiple people, it's a lot more difficult. There is an option in the share screen button. No, sorry. Here, let me bring this down here. The option to multiple participants can share simultaneously. Just be aware that that's really going to eat up your computer's processing power. So most of the time, you're not going to want to do that. Again, proctoring an exam in Zoom is possible, not ideal. Just those are kind of the two things there. It's just they share their screen, you watch them. Please share again how one can switch to the polling function. If you are the host, again, if you're a participant, you're not going to see this, but the host has a polling button right here. If you have created polls ahead of time, that just shows up. I can edit the question, but that opens up a web page. So I can add questions, but again, that's really something you want to do ahead of time. But when you're ready to launch it, it's just a polls button right there. Okay, what else?
Ryan, this is Stephanie, and I have a question for you.
Sure.
When COVID started, we were told that Zoom would be available for an undefined period of time as a pro account. Do you know how long we will have access to Zoom at this point?
My assumption is they're not going to take it away from us. For one, now that instructors are really getting used to teaching this way, some of them are going to want to continue. So again, we have a finite number as it is. And so we can add more and more licensed accounts up until we hit that cap. My guess is we'll never go more than what we have now, but I highly doubt that we will go less than what we have now. It's possible, but if that happens, it's going to be widely communicated ahead of time. It won't be for this fall. It won't be for this spring, this coming spring. I guarantee that, just because we're still going to be dealing with this COVID. So it's going to be, if we ever do it at all, which again, I highly doubt, it's going to be a while. So I would trust that it's going to be available for a long time.
Perfect, thank you. I hadn't started planning fall because I didn't want to find that I had to find a new technology after learning this.
Yeah, no, I guarantee for fall it's still available.
Hey, Ryan, this is Abu. Another question. I think I was through the whole meeting, but did you talk about editing after recording via Zoom?
No, because that's a whole separate topic that's outside of Zoom. You can't do any video editing within Zoom itself. And so your options are the same as they would be if you want to edit any video, because that's just an MP4 file. And so Panopto has some very, very limited editing capabilities, like trimming the beginning and end or cutting a section out of the middle. Otherwise, you have options like Camtasia, or lots of different options that are available online. Camtasia is probably one of my #1 favorites. Adobe Premiere is also available. It's very expensive and a high learning curve. So,
But WSO doesn't support any of those, right? Online means
Premiere, we do have Premiere available through the Adobe Cloud. How far they support it is up to debate. There's not a lot of people who can train you how to do Premiere because it's got a high learning curve. Camtasia, it's not officially supported. There are a lot of people on campus who do use Camtasia though, including my wife.
okay. Another quick question. So in say I have my own YouTube or Facebook page and I want to share through those, is there any legal issues?
Are you talking about live or recorded?
No, both, say both.
Okay, so I'll talk about live first. So live, if you're going live, just remember that because YouTube and Zoom are a public platform, if you go live, you must have closed captions. And closed captions have to be done according to our agreement with the Federation for the Blind, has to be done by a live person. And live captioning services are $100 per hour. So we highly discourage people from going live on Facebook or YouTube unless they have a very, 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 very good reason, because it's expensive because you have to have that captioner. If you don't have a captioner and you go live, then we can be held for another lawsuit. And so you have to be very careful about that. Recorded, not as big of a deal because you can get, YouTube can do captions for you. Again, that's the machine caption, so they're not as good, but you can clean those up. So you can go in and clean up your closed captions in YouTube. Just be aware that, again, if you have any identifiable students in there whatsoever, a name, a voice, a face, anything, it really should not go on anything public because that would be a FERPA violation. So, but if it's just a conversation between you and a guest speaker, knock yourself out. There's no legal ramifications for putting that on YouTube or Facebook. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. Did I discuss playing music and videos? Yes. In the share screen option, when you click share screen, this optimize screen sharing for video clip, if you're sharing a video, or just share the computer sound if you are wanting to, oh, sorry, not see that. Now you can see it. The share computer sound. No issues with lag live. Not really. No, there's not really a lot of issue with lag, just because of the way that Zoom does it. Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit. Now with Zoom, or excuse me, with YouTube, there's a much bigger lag in YouTube, but that's just YouTube's delay. They have a live delay on YouTube. Any issues, copyright from sharing a video from, say, Netflix? You can't. I wouldn't do it to YouTube. If you're sharing a Netflix video in your class, I wouldn't say the copyright is really much different than you sharing a Netflix video in your face-to-face class. I mean, technically, if you can get really nitty-gritty about the copyright law, yes, there is a difference. But who's going to find out? It's in your closed class, in your closed. Don't share a whole movie. Just don't do that. That's just bad teaching to begin with. But if you want to share clips off of Netflix, it's fine. Yeah, just think of it like you would a face-to-face class. Sharing a whole movie is generally not a good idea, either face-to-face or Zoom. So, all right. Wow, you guys ask great questions. Thank you all for coming.
One more, Ryan, sorry.
No problem.
If I have to choose on between Panopto and Zoom, or if you have to choose on, which one you would choose?
Choose between Panopto and Zoom?
Yeah.
Well, they're two very different tools. Panopto is for recorded video, Zoom is for live interactive meetings. So I would never choose between the two. How they play together is a question, but again, Zoom is for the live synchronous classes. Panopto is where I put the recordings.
Okay, I see that. Okay, thank you.
Ryan, is there a way to unmute all the participants at once?
Yes and no. There is a button to unmute all. At least there used to be.
There used to be, but it's been gone for about 2 weeks.
Yep.
And I have a situation where I want the group to talk together at the end of the session. And I have to, and it's a big enough group that going through one by one.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I take that for granted that that's always been there, and now it's not there. Yeah, it looks like they removed that feature, probably for security reasons. But yeah, there used to be an unmute all button once upon a time.
Right. Okay.
But even then, what it would do is it would pop up a thing saying the instructor wants to unmute you. Do you want to? Yes. They have to approve it. But no. So what you would do in that scenario is just uncheck the box. Here, let's put it back over here so you can see it. You would just uncheck the box that says, or check the box that says allow participants to unmute themselves, and then tell them to unmute themselves. But
Okay.
you can't do it for them.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Any other questions? You all have been very wonderful and gracious, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you being here. Make sure you look at all the other things that the ARC conference is offering and go to as many sessions as you can.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Bye-bye.